You look around you and you see sickness. Sickness everywhere. A sickness that doesn't discriminate by age, gender, race, or sexuality. No, almost all the people you know have it. They're all suffering. You're suffering as well, but nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to acknowledge the Tyrannosaurus Rex in the room. The illness. Mental illness everywhere. Mental illness has gotten to an all-time high. It may not seem obvious on the first glance, but everyone is suffering in a major way right now. There's a mental health crisis in the West, and we currently lack the resources to properly be able to deal with the issue. Psychologists are vastly overworked, and it can take years, yes you heard me right, years to get an appointment in some countries. Britain. Even if you manage to get an appointment, there's no guarantee they can quote-unquote fix you. And your mental state has probably deteriorated a very significant amount since the last time you tried to seek help. We have almost no early warning system set up to treat mental illnesses early on, before they develop into something more serious, and we even stigmatize the people who do try to open up about their mental health and try to get better. The old picking yourself up by your bootstraps strategy simply doesn't work anymore, and you can't thug it out all on your own, even if you try. So because we have so many societal issues surrounding mental health today, our situation may seem dire, but fear not, because I have a proposition how we could fix it, or at the very least greatly improve upon it. I present to you the concept of mental health herd immunity. We have known about herd immunity in the medical community for a long time now. It is the concept of the vast majority of the population being healthy and or vaccinated, so the people who can't be vaccinated or have autoimmune disorders have a much lower risk of infection. We know about the huge benefits herd immunity has for everybody. The only real downside being that even perfectly healthy people have to get a flu shot once a year, for example, if they don't want to infect their loved ones. But this isn't even necessary. Herd immunity is only bad for people who are against vaccines, but I'm pretty sure they're also a temporary problem because of survival of the fittest. If you want to live like they did in the Middle Ages, that's perfectly fine with me, but be prepared to die like in the Middle Ages. Herd immunity also lessens the infection rates of healthy people, so it benefits everybody. Surely there must be something similar for our mental health, right? Of course not. Just like people were skeptical of vaccines back then, people are now skeptical towards taking care of your mental health and talking openly about it. I think on average people actually bring each other down instead of helping each other. For example, men don't cry. You look like you could lose some weight. Damn, you're skinny. Eat a sandwich or something. You talk too much. Why are you so quiet? Quit being so enthusiastic, it's annoying. Man, you're such a downer. And worst of all, you're not Ryan Gosling. No matter what you do as a person, people will try to find flaws in you, and they'll gladly make fun of those flaws or confront you about it, instead of helping you in any meaningful way. I think our sociology is vastly underdeveloped for the industrialized, inhuman environment we've created, so it makes sense that nobody really thought of applying herd immunity to mental health. Of course, this mostly applies to the Western world, because in the East, your individual happiness is less valuable than the communal happiness, but they do go overboard with the whole "your happiness is worth nothing if it doesn't benefit the community," in my opinion. But if we combine Eastern and Western principles, we can potentially strike a balance between them and be happier as a result. While Western ideas focus more on the individual's satisfaction, the way the West has set up mental health professionals and facilities is very anti-human, in my opinion. First of all, every medical professional is highly specialized in their respective field, so once you suffer from a condition that is both mental and physical, the whole system fails because they keep referring you to other doctors. Mental issues can totally affect not only your sanity, but also your physical body. You can literally experience physical pain just because of the brain. Don't you love your brain always looking out for you? For example, if you lose a limb, you can get phantom pain where that limb used to be. That pain is entirely mental, but it's just as real as actual physical pain. Or you could have a debilitating physical condition, for example unknown allergy to gluten, that could result in a terrible mental state. So a specialist isn't necessarily what you need in these situations. Even if it's just a mental illness, you're supposed to search for a therapist, and then they'll tell you some stuff, but that therapist wasn't right for you, so you go to another therapist, but they weren't the right fit either, so the search goes on and so on. The only solution for mental illnesses and afflictions we have is going to a therapist or a psychiatrist, who will then diagnose you with usually a myriad of things and then give you some pills that might make you feel better. Sometimes they can make you feel much worse, or have little to no effect on you, but you get addicted to them anyway, and now you're even worse off. In medicine, we have surgeons, technicians, generalized doctors, and very importantly, non-medical professionals such as physical therapists and chiropractors. If you want to lose some weight, you can just go to a personal trainer instead of instantly going for the fat reduction surgery. This whole ecosystem of health is lacking in our mental health system. What if I'm just feeling sad today and I need someone to talk to? I don't want to immediately go with the nuclear option and take some sedatives to sedate myself and my feelings. Or do I always need to go to talk to a therapist about my mental issues, when my friend Tyreek is right there, and he always knows what to say? That being Obama. So what if we taught people on a wide scale how to treat mental health issues that could escalate in the future? This is of utmost importance because if you catch the thought processes that lead to mental harm early, it's way easier than trying to pick up the broken pieces of your sanity and slowly becoming more and more mentally unwell until you can't take it anymore. First aid for mental health is incredibly crucial to stopping this mental health crisis that is, as of writing this, still on the rise. You could teach this first aid for mental health in schools because the school curriculum needs to be updated anyways. Make the knowledge publicly available on the internet and run a ton of ads so that people learn how to help their friends and loved ones when they're experiencing symptoms of being mentally ill. The school in particular already is almost completely useless when it comes to learning valuable skills in your later life. So why don't we just add useful material for once, like teaching the children about their mental health? Doing this from a young age is also absolutely crucial because they can be influenced more easily and they're way less stubborn towards learning compared to older generations. For example, seatbelts became an essential item for automobile safety only after the school started to teach the children the importance of seatbelts. This resulted in the children annoying their parents to always have their seatbelts on, and they themselves would always put their own seatbelts on. So we have tangible results that the school system can actually enact huge societal changes. So why not use it to our advantage again, but instead of car safety, we'll talk about mental safety. I think most people are just not equipped to deal with panic attacks, breakdowns, thoughts of self-termination, and manic episodes. Everybody just says it is what it is and moves on because they don't know what to say, what type of voice they should use, and what words would be appropriate or inappropriate. Their actions and reactions to these situations are so incredibly important that it could mean life or death, no exaggeration. Sometimes people spontaneously decide to end their own life after a major manic episode, and a simple "don't do it" from their friends would probably stop them. But they won't call their friends, because they don't want to bother them with this. This absolutely has to change, without question. Most of the things I mentioned are also avoidable, if you know how to treat them and see the signs before they happen. In fact, you could look up treatments on the internet right now. It's almost silly just how much a good few words of reassurance can do when you need them. Our current detection of early signs of mental illness are absolutely abysmal. 90% of the time, people will only go to therapy as their last resort. By that point, they've probably tried committing self-imposed termination, had a psychotic meltdown, or became completely delusional, thus becoming chronic illnesses and conditions that put them on medication and forced psychiatric treatment for the rest of their lives. That is, if you can even afford treatment, because even in countries that aren't the neoliberalistic dystopia that we like to call the USA, there just aren't enough resources available for free therapy. You have to pay if you want to keep your sanity, because the society we've created drives everybody insane. But we don't have to live in a dystopia. Shocking, I know. Suffering in itself is not necessary. To suffer without cause is meaningless. I think a huge step to improve our society is to teach the average person how to detect early signs of mental illness, so that we don't end up with chronic, debilitating illnesses. And therapists would probably be trusted more, because they can actually help people to the point where therapy isn't necessary anymore. What I mean is that if we catch the mental issues early, a trained therapist should be able to fully treat them. They're just forced to only treat chronic illnesses because only the most severe cases deserve treatment. The second part of the mental health herd immunity is that humans are societal creatures, and we adapt to our surroundings. This includes our social circles. When everybody around you is super depressed and miserable, you're more likely to also be depressed and miserable as a result. But the inverse is also true. If everybody around you is happy and hopeful for the future, you're more likely to mirror their behavior and emotions. So even if you have a bad case of the Monday blues, when you show up to school or work and all of your acquaintances are talking about how there's always a rainbow at the end of a storm, and you just have to look for it, it might improve your mood, and also make you more hopeful for the future. Even if you're feeling down right now, I think a culture of hope is better than a culture of misery. Even though all of the most popular shows and movies this decade are about dystopias, misery, and cynicism, this is because of our bias towards negativity, because our brain has evolved to think that things which could potentially harm you are way more important than things that can make you happy. It makes sense. Being afraid of tigers in your area gave you a better chance to survive, instead of welcoming them because you think they're cute. The big downside of the negativity bias is people wanting to exploit your money and attention, so they make negative media that feeds right into your negativity bias. To clarify, I don't think that peer-to-peer mental help should replace therapy, but that it's added to our arsenal of combating the mental health crisis. We actually used to have a form of mental health herd immunity because we mostly lived in communities. You didn't have to pay somebody to listen to your problems and all of your complicated feelings. Your friends and loved ones would do that for you. Because of communities, people tended to be less lonely and touch-starved. There were group activities to boost morale, and because the people in these communities weren't hyper-focused on a topic, like how to solve a semi-translucent spinning dodecahedral Rubik's Cube blindfolded with only vertical tongue movements, the echo chambers weren't as prevalent as they are today. Don't get me wrong, in some communities, especially the religious ones, the echo chambers were really strong. But in general, we had a good thing going, until the introduction of the nuclear family, where only your closest relatives remain. The nuclear family was created by a man named Bronislaw Majanovski in the 1920s, in which the word nuclear had different connotations associated with it compared to the modern day usage. Nuclear was used as in all family members were part of the same core. The fact that this aspect of sociology has not been improved upon since the 1920s is astounding, because our entire environment changed, but we still desperately try to adhere to some norm established over a century ago. I think that the nuclear family was useful during the threat of imminent nuclear war, because it prepared people to survive and be able to rely on smaller groups. If most of the population was wiped out, then you would be forced to rely on as few human interactions as possible. Nevertheless, nuclear families led to even more isolation, loneliness, and longing. The communal way of living may be even older than the nuclear family construct, but it has stood the test of time, and its benefits are an urgent need. This is why I think the time has come for change. It amazes me every day how humanity is still alive, but definitely not well. I have reason to believe the monetization that has come from the isolation due to the abolishment of communities isn't entirely accidental. Once you're on antidepressants, you'll be needing them for life, and you become a forever customer, even if you don't want to. They're probably just opportunists taking advantage of people's misery, but the financial incentive for misery is quite distressing to say the least. In summary, I believe that herd immunity for mental health is the key to decreasing rates of mental illness and potentially even self-end rates, and you can do your part by teaching yourself how to comfort somebody that is depressed or feeling incredibly anxious right now, for example. Even if you can only use the knowledge you have learned on yourself, that's one less person suffering, and maybe even one less person committing self-end. So it's perfectly fine if you have to save yourself first, before you can help others. A channel I would recommend to help yourself is Healthy Gamer GG. They have an actual doctor to give you advice on how to solve some of your problems, and it's a really great channel all around. Thank you so much for watching this video. This one is pretty important to me, actually, and I would absolutely adore it if you shared it as much as you are able to. I think this is an important conversation that needs to be had, and even if the topic of mental health is taboo in many cultures, we urgently need to address it before it gets worse. I mean, it's already terrible, so we can't afford to make it worse. I hope you enjoyed the video, and bye bye!